So we are on the bottom of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Tan Rabban. 6 lines from the bottom. Tan Rabban. Ein ma'avrin hashana. We did this already, but we're gonna.
We did it. We were up to the case that.
Yeah, but we'll just start from there. Tan Rabban. Ein ma'avrin hashana lebnei hagdim lebnei hatlev lebnei hagayzos. You don't do it because of the lack of the shortage of, well-fattened goats or kids, and not because of the birds. But they can do. You can use them as a auxiliary reason. Once you have the main reasons, which the Gemara is going to explain later on, these can also be an additional cheshbon to take into account. Ketza. How is the process of letting people know? Good morning. We're just about to start really on the 4 lines from the bottom of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Ketzat. So what's the process of notifying people of the Iber Hashana? B'yanayim, of adding an extra month. B'yanayim Mishum Reb Shimon Gamliel M'hoidon Anachana L'choin. We are informing you the Guzle Rechichen Imra de Arkin, that the birds are shvach and the sheep are still not fattened. And the time, as we're going to see later on, one of the basic reasons for making Ba'aba L'Shana is we want the wheat to ripen in its proper time, which is Chodesh Aviv. Pesach is the Chodesh Aviv. So we want the wheat ripening to happen then and not happen later. Not happen too late. So therefore we push off Pesach by adding Adar. Then Pesach will be a month later, and the wheat will ripen at that time.
So Yud Aleph Amud.
Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, 3 lines in the bottom. And the nusach continues. V'shefarta milsa ba'am poi, and in our eyes, it's the right thing to do. V'isifas al shasaha tlosin yumin, and we're adding on 30 days to this year. That was the nusach that was sent out to inform people that they were ma'abed l'shana. Meisvei, Frekta Gemara. The men was mentioned that they were increased, that Rabbi Gamliel, Shimon Gamliel said they increased the year by 30 days. Kama Iber Hashana Shloshim Yom. Tanakam says Iber Hashana, you add the extra Adar is a 30-day Adar. Shimon Gamliel, I'm a Chodesh. He says it's a Chodesh. A Chodesh is 29 days. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel was the Mandam who said before 30 days, and now he's saying a Chodesh. Amar Papa Ratzu Chodesh Ratzu Shloshim Yom. He says no. What it means that when he said it's a Chodesh, it means you have a choice. It could be either 29 days or 30 days. That's part of the decision. And being Ma'abed L'Shana is the size of the month of Adar that you add on. So the Gemara makes an observation. Tochazi ma'ika bein tkifa kadmoi li'nusei basroi. Reb Shimon Gamliel was the mandama we just said, who is the son of Reb Gamliel. And we're going to talk about Reb Gamliel himself. Reb Shimon Gamliel said this, in a he said it, in such a in a direct way, and his father said it in a more he said it, he didn't say that he was doing it himself. He included others in the decision. The Tanya, Ma'aseh Gamliel, who was the father, obviously, of Shimon Gamliel, he was sitting on the steps in Har HaBayis. Yochanan Sefer Halaz Aymed Lefanav. Yochanan Sefer Halaz was standing in front of him. V'sholosh Igros Chatuchas Lefanav, and there were 3 letters divided up in front of him. They were separated. They probably wrote it on one paper and then cut it up into 3 separate letters. They were sitting in front of him. Take 1 letter, because of, and write on it, La'achno b'nei Galila, to our brothers, the people living in Galil, meaning in the north of Eretz Yisrael. Galila, the upper Galil, Ulachna, Bnei Galila Tato, and our brothers in the lower Galil, meaning not up the mountains and in the lower elevations. Shloim Chain Yiska. Wishing you shalom. You should have plenty of shalom. Muhaydin anachana l'chayin. We're informing you dizman biura mata, that the time for biur, they're twice in the 7 years of the Shemitah, that I think it's the third year and the 6th year, that it becomes incumbent to, and for everyone to, if they were delaying, if they were procrastinating and separating the Trumas and Maasros, the Maasros finally, the bill comes due, and you gotta either put up or shut up. At that point, you have to separate the Maasros, and if you don't do so, it's going to be as Mambir, and you have to be Mavar, you have to destroy it. So he sent a letter to tell them, first of all, the time is coming that you have to do so. And so, Lafrushe Maasra Mimatana Dezesa. So you have to separate the Maasros from your olives. The toil. So that was one letter that he sent out, because in the north it was very common to grow olives. So he sent them. They had the storehouses of olives, telling them you have to take care of taking of your maasros. Time has run out. The toil igrus echad of kasav laachna b'nei de Roima, sent to our brothers in Rome. Shloimchem yiska, shalom to you. Ma'idin anachan l'chayin dizman biura matal afrushe maasra. I'm sorry, not the Rome, not of Rome, of the south. Yeah, the Negev. So they were growing. That's the wheat growing part of Eretz Yisrael. So the time has come. Lafrushe Maisra me Omre Shivlei. It's time to separate the Maisa from your wheat. With toil igris echad of a kasav laachna b'nei galvasa bebavel. Those that are in Galus and Bavel, Achna the Madai, and the brothers that are in Madai, L'shagal Galusa di Yisrael, in all the places where Yidden are in Galus. Shloim Chen Yiska, Shalom Aleichem to you, La'olam, Yiska La'olam, Mohaydina, he sent them I guess they needed a bigger bracha. He said, you should have Shalom. They really needed the bracha because they were out in Galus. Mohaydina Anachna L'chayin, we're informing you, the Guzle Rekikin Ve'imra Arkin, that the birds are not fully grown, and the imra are slight, they're not fleshed out. And the time for the ripening of wheat hasn't arrived. He's stuck in the words, not just it's a good idea to me, but he said it's also a good idea in front of my chaverim. He said I consulted my chaverim. So this is Rabbi Gamliel, who's the father of Shem Gamliel, who didn't feel necessary to say ba'ampe chaveri. But in any case, Vaisifa al shasa hayomin tlasin dilma, so al shasa da yomin tlasa, and we're adding on to this 30 days. So the Gemara is questioning, how could it be that Rabbi Gamliel was more of an anav than his son? He had much less to be an anav for. He was a earlier generation. The Gemara Dilma Basa Davruah. There was a whole story with Rabbi Gamliel that he was removed from office as the Nasi. So maybe the reason he spoke so modestly was because he was no longer the Nasi. Now it's a little questionable, because that was the case. Why was he the one making the decision? Right? We said that the decision of Iber has to be decided by the Nasi. Yeah, so Taisus answers this. Taisus Basa Davruah Pirish Bahele Chaver Abelazar Ben Azariah She Nasi Ima Lekach Ama Ba'ampe Chavra. He said it Adarabba. It wasn't just that he was more modest. Taisus is saying, he's saying Ba'ampe Chavra, I'm no longer the Nasi, I'm saying it with the Nasi. That was his point. Zekumar Tana Rabban. Ashloisha Dvar Ma'avr Mesashana. So we had said there were 3 things that can be auxiliary reasons. We had mentioned of it, but there are 3 other reasons. There are 2 other reasons in addition to that we want the wheat to ripen at the right time. Allah Aviv, like we said, in order to ensure that the wheat ripens in Pesach time, Val Peres Elon, and that the fruit will be ripe in the proper time. So and Taisus Rashi precludes. Don't think the Gemara is going to say later on, and it's going to be clear from the context. We're not saying that we want to have the fruit to be prepared so you could bring bikurim, because Gemara is going to say, because you could always bring it to the next Yom Tov. So it's that, but it just means in general we want that it's proper to have the fruit ready before Shavuos. Valat Kufa, and the last one is because of the seasons. So the seasons, there's a whole explanation that essentially the sun goes from east to west, and in the every day, but every day it turns a little. The arc moves either northward or southward, and the further, I think the way it works is, the further south it goes, I don't remember which way it is, but I think the further south it goes, that means the days get shorter, and then the further north it goes, the days get longer. But then there's this switch off in the middle. So the fourth kufas are represented when the sun reaches its most northernmost point. Then as it's going back to the south, when it passes over the equator, and then when it reaches like directly overhead, and then when it reaches the most southernmost point. So you have basically, those are the four divisions of when you have basically fall, winter, summer, and spring and summer. As we all know, right? There's a point in the summer when the days stop, when Shabbos starts getting earlier. That's when I think the sun is at its furthest, I think the furthest north, but I'm not sure. And
yeah, it's north. It's got to be
the furthest north, right?
Yeah,
and then
we get more light. We're in the northern hemisphere. We get more light.
Yeah. So then when it gets sometime in the fall, it gets to where it's by the equator, and it's now starting to get it's by the equator, it's halfway, and then it starts going down to where we're past the halfway point. Like you'd think of it sort of like 6 o'clock in our mind is the equilibrium between the shortest and the longest. So that's the halfway point. So that's the beginning of fall. And then when it gets all the way down, which is somewhere around now, a little bit earlier than this, it gets to the point where it's the shortest. In any case, the point of all this is the intersection between the lunar calendar and the solar calendar. We want to have these things be in equilibrium. We want to have the different seasons be in the proper time, the tkufas be in the proper time. So that would be a reason to add a month if this is getting out of whack, where you have the tkufa of the spring, that it's coming out after Pesach. It's supposed to be around Pesach time. If it's coming out after, so they would add in a month. Okay. Al shnayim mehem ma'avrin. The Gemara says for two of these reasons, we be ma'avr. If two of these are in effect, the aviv, the peris, and the tkufa. But the most important reason to everyone is that the wheat should be ready in the proper time. So everyone's happy about that when that is one of the reasons. Reb Shimon Gamliel Aimer al tkufa. Reb Shimon Gamliel says the tkufa. Ibayalu. What does he mean when he says al tkufa? Does he say is it an emendation of the first thing that we said or the second? Doesn't mean on the second al tkufa smechen. That it's not that they're most happy about the ovid, but then what they're really most happy about, the seasons work out properly. Or does he mean to say, not like we had said first, that aviv is enough of a reason on its own to be ma'aver? He's saying that kufa is the reason on its own to be ma'aver. The Gemara Teika, it's not certain which way it was meant. Tanarba, al shloisha artsois ma'aver nesashana. On there are three. This that we said al ha'aviv, that we worry about where the wheat will be ripe in the proper time. That applies in three separate, not different lands, but three different areas. Yehuda, ve'evar Yarden, ve'haglil. Yehuda and Ever Yarden, which is what we know today as Jordan, the other side of the Yarden, and Glil is the north. On if two of them are off kilter and therefore they need to have the year delayed, you have to add in a chaydish ibur, you do it. But if just one of the three, then it's not enough. But the most important thing, everyone's happy if Yehuda is one of those that it's going to need that's going to have its wheat ready. Why is that? Shein Aimer Ba'alam Yehuda, because Me'ikar Hadin, the Aimer comes from newly ripened barley, and Yehuda is obviously closest to Eretz Yisrael, right? The north is far away, and obviously Yarden is also, Eber Yarden is also far away. So they want to have fresh barley for the Eimer. So if the what should we call it? If Yehuda is not one of the, if Yehuda is the only one that's late, and therefore they're not able to be ma'ava the shana, people are disappointed because then the barley they're not ma'ava the shana, and the barley is not ripe. They have to bring barley from somewhere else where it's not so ready. So therefore, everyone's happy when Yehuda is one of the places that that's in the majority that needs it to be ma'ober, and therefore they're ma'ava the shana for it. Tan Rabban, ein ma'aver nesha shanim ela b'Yehuda. The only the place where it takes place, where the cheshbon, the bezdin gets together and is ma'av l'shana, is in Yehuda. The mivura beglil muberes. But if they do it at someplace else, it's also b'diavad good. Hey, it Chananya ish oina im ivra beglil eina muberes. He said, no, it's not good. It has to be in Yehuda. Yehuda Breder of Shimon ben Pazi, my time at the Chananya ish oina. Why does he say that even b'diavad it's not good if you're ma'av l'shana somewhere else? Amakra l'shachnei tidrashenu, to my place of where I reside. That's where tidrashu. You should seek me out. Ubasa shama, and you should come there. But we darshan kol drisha sha'ata darish lo ye'ela b'shachnei shel makom. Whenever you make a drisha, like we say drisha v'chakir, when you make your investigations, when you make your this is the Pashta Pshat is when the rush with you derish Hashem, or you seek out the Rebbeinu Shalom. We darshan to mean like a drisha v'chakirish, your investigations, your determinations of whether to be ma'av the shana should only be b'shachnei shel makom, the place where the Rebbeinu Shalom resides, which is by Yehuda in the Beis Hamikdash, which is near Yehuda. Tan Rabban, ein ma'av nesha shana ela b'yayim. You only do Iber Hashana, the Bezdin only gets together by day. But at night it's tak, even with the Evid, it's not good. You can't do the Kiddush as well, right? The Kiddush is where you have, every month, you have to have the Eidim come and say whether that they saw the new moon. Amar Baba, Mikra, this is going to be just a pasuk for the Kiddush HaChodesh. We don't really have a pasuk why the Iber Hashana has to be B'yayim. But I guess it's because, I would imagine we assume that just like, as we'll see. It says, you should blow the shofar b'chesel yom chagenu at the time of the uncovering of the Yom Chag. Ezu chag she'achodesh mischased by. What does that mean? Which Yom Tov is the moon covered over? Habiyayim is Rosh Hashanah. The moon is only covered over; it only disappears on Rosh Chodesh. The only Yom Tov that takes place on Rosh Chodesh is Rosh Hashanah. Because of Uksiv, Ki Chayk Yisrael Hu Mishpat L'Lekei Yaakov, and the pasuk continues and it says Ki Chayk Yisrael Hu Tikva Chashav V'Chaim Chayeni Chayk Yisrael Hu. So we compare it to a Mishpat. Ma Mishpat B'Yom Av Kiddush HaChodesh B'Yom. This Rosh Hashanah, which is only on Rosh Chodesh, which therefore requires Kiddush HaChodesh, that needs to be like the mishpat, which is only by day. I assume that therefore Iber Hashanah is the same thing. There's also a type of mishpat. Once we compare Kiddush HaChodesh, which is a din that's taking place b'negeya to Kiddush HaChodesh, so we extend it to all the different things that will affect the Mayadim. Tan Rabban, Ein Ma'avrinas Hashanah. We don't add in a month into the year. B'shnei Ravin, in the years of famine, for obvious reasons, right? They're running out of food in their storehouses, and everyone's eagerly awaiting for the Omer to be brought so they could use the Chodesh, they could use from the new crops. So if you wait an extra month, then people will have to wait longer. So even though people want that the Chodesh HaAv should be in Pesach, they'd rather have food to eat. That's more important. Tanya, Rebbe Omer, Ish ba mi Baal Shlisha. Men came from Baal Shlisha, which is a place. He brought to the Navi, I think that was Elisha. Yeah, he brought to him lechem sairim. He brought lechem bikurim, which means Rashi says lechem bikurim means lechem aviv, she'achshav humavaka, that had just ripened, and he bought 20 loaves of bread made out of barley. The first place that that things ripen in all Eretz Yisrael is Baal Shlisha. If Alpha became like Bachar element min echad, and the only thing that was ready was the barley. Now Shema Taimer Chitim. I also, how do you know that it was barley? Maybe it was chitin. How do you know that the barley was ripened? Tamalayim, it's Sairim, says Sairim. Shema Taim Lefnei Aimer. Gemara says, but how do you know that it's talking about? Maybe it was talking about well before Pesach. How do we know that this is talking about later on? Tamalayim Tain La'am V'Yachelu Achar Aimahaya. If they said to give to everyone, Vaistais, that people were allowed to eat, so it must have been after the Aimer. So you see, for really, that year really should have been, really should have been delayed. Malay Ivra. Why wasn't it delayed? Malay Ivra Elisha. Why didn't he delay it? The reason must be because it was a year of famine, and that's why they delayed the year. That's why they delayed being Ma'abed Shana, even though it was appropriate to do so, because of how late everything, because of how late everything was ripening. Saktuma Tanarban. Ema Avanes Hashana Lefnei Rosh Hashanah. We are not Ma'abed Shana before Rosh Hashanah. We don't. That means we don't make the decision to be Ma'av Shana before Rosh Hashanah because we're worried that people will forget by the time it gets to Adar and they'll just start preparing for Pesach. Then Ivrua ain't a muber. So if they do so, it's not mub. Avum ne'at chak, but in a time of necessity, meaning where they're not going to be able to get everyone together, the Bezdin together, the Sanhedrin together to make a decision. You do it immediately after Rosh Hashanah. If Alf became, the only chodesh you could be ma'aver is Adar. You can't say if you're doing it. Listen. My cheshbon, we already realize we know we're not going to be able to get together later, and we have to be ma'aver Shana now. So let's make an extra cheshbon or an extra kislev. You can't do so. This is a this is a coded message. They sent to Rav a coded message. I guess it was a time that the Romans were breathing down their backs, and they didn't like that they would Bate Dinin, the Sanhedrin was making decisions. So they said, Zoig ba mirakis v'tafshoy nefsher. A zoig, a pair, meaning a group of Talmidei Chachamim, was coming from Rekas, and is Rekas we had back in Gittin. We Rekem L'chaga. I think Rekas was meant Tferia. The Tafshay Nesher, and they were captured by an eagle. So an eagle was referred to was the Paras, so it refers to their army. Ubiyadam Dvarim Hanasa Beluz, and in their hands are things that were made in Luz. So what are these? So the Gemara is going to explain what Dvar Hanasim Beluz or my Niu Tchelis. That in Luz was where they got Tchelis from. So that's what they mean. They had in their hands Tchelis, and it continues. B'schus harachmim, b'schusam, in the schus of the Rebbeinu Shalom, and in the schus of their own schusim, yatzu b'shalom. They were able to come. They were able to leave and get around the Persian soldiers that were trying to capture them. They got away from them. Va'amuse Yerechai Nachshon, and they are from the descendants of Nachshon, or the descendants of Nachshon, which is a reference. I don't remember if the Gemara says, but Rashi says, Amusa Yerechai Nachshon, Nasi Sheberetz Yisrael, Shu Mizer Nachshon ben Aminadav, Rishon L'Nesiim. Nachshon ben Aminadav was the first leader of the Yehuda, which is where the Nesiim come from. So it was a way of saying the Nesiim. As we know, the Nesiim are the ones who decide the Ibra Shana. So Bikshu L'Tvaya Netziv Echad. They wanted to be Kaveya a Netziv Echad. So Rashi explains Bikshu L'Hoitziv Netziv Echad, Bikshu L'Hoitziv Chodesh Adar Al Shana Lavra. We're going to explain, I think the Gemara is going to explain why Netziv means Shana. But they couldn't do so because of the a certain person from Edom, which is referring to the Romans. They were the masters. Avobale asufos nesvu, but they were still those who are in charge of getting together made sure they got together. And they were keveya netziv echad, which we said refers to an extra month in the month that Aaron died. Shemeis Aaron by Aaron HaKohen. So which is the month of Av. So first of all, before we get to the explanation of how this code means what we just said it means, the basic question is, we said that you can only do it after Rosh Hashanah. You can only add a month. I'm sorry, you can only add Adar, and we're saying they added on Av. Oh, I'm sorry, no. We say you can only make the cheshbon after Rosh Hashanah, and we're saying that they did it. They made this decision in Av. So it's okay for the Sanhedrin to make a cheshbonis and think about it, but they were not, as long as they're not megala it till after Rosh Hashanah. Like we said, the reason to do it after Rosh Hashanah is because before that people forget. So if they don't tell people until then, you don't have that problem. So where does it come from that this standing means a month, that you're adding on a month? I'll call Yisrael. Shlomo appointed 12 netzivim or officers on the whole Klal Yisrael. The kolkulos hamelech, they would take taxes. They would take those taxes and support the melech as anash of chodesh b'shana, and each one would support the melech for 1 month. So therefore, an officer became associated with a month, and when we say netziv, that means to add a month to the year. In fact, it says that there was only one netziv in the land, meaning for the whole year. He says no. That they say that was that on top of the netziv that there was for each month, there was one who was on charge over all of them. And one says that extra one, the netziv echad asher ba'aretz, refers to the month that was being ma'uber, that was being added in. Tanarban, im avernus hashana, loy mishana lechaverta. You can't be ma'aver the shana from one year to the next. You can't say already in this year we're going to be ma'aber next year, because we could already see how things are cooking. The loy shalosh shalom zu achazu. This seems to mean, there's different for pshatim and the Rishonim. This means you can't do 3 consecutive years to be ma'ober. You can't do year 1, year 2, and 3 all ma'ober. Rabbi Kiva was locked up in prison. He eventually was going to be killed as one of the Asar Harugei Malchus. The Iver Shalosh Shanim Zu Achazu, and he's ma'aber 3 shanim. Amulai Misham Raya. That's a raya. Bezdin Yashu V'Kavu Achas Bismana. It doesn't mean that Rabbi Kiva was ma'aber the 3 years that he was in prison. It means that he told them that you're going to have to be ma'aber in the future, the year 1 and year 4 and year 5 or year 6, whatever the case may be. But he wasn't saying that they should be 3 years in a row. And he was just telling them, and he was the expert at being Ibra Hashana, but he just gave them advice of how to do it. Hanarabban, ein ma'avernas Hashana loy b'shvias v'loy b'moitzoi shvias. You can't be ma'aver the shana in Shemitah because people are running out of food. They're not allowed to use from the fields until shvias, the year is over. So you don't add an extra month to it. V'loy b'moitzoi shvias because they're waiting for the Omer so they could eat the new fruit. Emasai regin laver erev shvias. So the best year to do it is erev shvias. That gives them more time to grow and finish their crops that they could store for the next year. So basically, they would be ma'aver moitzoi shvias. Why do they do so? Look to the Hani Tanoi. The reason was based on this machlekes. The Tanya, ein mevin yerek michutz la'aretz. The Tanakama says you can't import vegetables and produce from chutz la'aretz. For Rabbi Seinu hitiru, and the Rabbi Seinu allowed it. Meaning, Shalbeis Rabbi Gamliel did allow to bring from chutz la'aretz. My benai, what's the reason not to bring in produce from chutz la'aretz? Amar Rav Yirmiyah choishin legushayin. The choishish that there's going to be some earth that's going to be attached to this produce. When you bring it in, there's some dirt attached, and the chama mesakim, that since the Goyim were not careful about where they buried people, the Masakin that all dirt from Chutz La'aretz has a din Tumah. In Eretz Yisrael, they had to be Chayshish V'Tumah because they had Kachim. So therefore, they were geyser not to bring in produce because it has some of this dirt that the Chamu Masakin was Tumah. One might ask, it's a Gzera l'Gzera. The answer as always is Kulachad Gzerahi. In the end, the Chum didn't want people to become Tumah. They were guys are not to do it. Tanrabba, we have. We'll stop over here. No need to. Guys, thank you so much for.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.